Hi, and welcome back to Devil's Advocate. I am your host, Tracey Lowe, and I am here today with a few more episodes of Indigenous Histories, with Truth and Reconciliation Month going on here in Canada, and with our missing children from our First Nations people. And today I am here with Bobby Bob, who is this is Bobby there, from the Ojibwe tribe, otherwise known as, or also known as the Anishinaabe tribe. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her background, and give us some more details as we move forward through the history that we don't really know. And I mean, and I say this as a colonial who comes from a long, long history of a country that has gone around exploring the world and both creating and destroying many things. So yeah, it's from a point of view that somebody like myself doesn't know as much as we should know about the history of our country and those who have joined with us in the journey since then. So with that, I would like to say, if you do like the show, don't forget to like and subscribe, and join us now. So, hi, Bobby. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon on our Indigenous History series and the ignorance and the arrogance of us from Britain and possibly elsewhere in Europe that has taken over so many different countries around the world. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Bobby.
Oh, okay. So I can introduce myself in a language. So generally when we go to meetings or any ceremonies, we introduce ourselves in our language. So I would go Ani Bojo, I Indishni Kasme Megwans Bimashe, Zalgamoka Nishtabak and Dojiba, Makwa Dodam, Anishnabe Koyenda. So what I said to you in Ojibwe is, hello, I see your light. My spirit name is Floating Butterfly. I'm from Sagamok Anishinaabe First Nation. I am Bear Clan as well as an Ojibwe woman. So I'm not too sure what else you want me to say, Tracey. I mean, I
Well,
started this
I thought I'd
journey.
just put your picture up here with all your regalia on. Perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit more about your regalia there.
So regalia is different for each person. So what I'm wearing right now, that is a jingle dress. When I am in powwows, people will come and offer me tobacco, and I'll put it in my little, you can see my little turtle purse on the side.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
usually put their tobacco in that turtle purse, and what they're asking for is me to dance for them. So the cones is supposed to heal people. So when all the jingle dancers get together, the powwow, we've all been offered tobacco, or we will be given tobacco, and we'll all dance together a medicine dance, and we'll all be dancing in unison this
Okay.
dance. So it's supposed to heal.
Oh, okay. And it's called a jingle dress.
That's called a jingle dress. But the specific style of dance that we all do is the medicine dance. That is only something jingle dressers do. And so with
Okay.
our regalia, so what I'm wearing right now, that immature eagle fan that was gifted to me at a ceremony. And then when I offered tobacco, so tobacco is super important for Indigenous people. It's one of our four sacred medicines. So we have tobacco, sage, sweetgrass, and cedar. And tobacco, like, introduce ourselves in the spirit name, because we're taught that the creator and everything else knows us by our spirit name. So floating butterfly would be mine. So when I go and offer my tobacco, asking for guidance and whatnot, we put all our prayers and good thoughts in that, and then it goes up to our creator. So with my jingle dress, I put my tobacco in the water, and I'm like, creator, I really want to start dancing. I don't know what style of dance I should be. Can you give me a sign of some sort? And it probably took maybe 6 or 7 months before I got that sign. And I was actually at a powwow in Six Nations, and I was watching the grand entry. and I saw all the jingle dancers go in. I'm like, wow, that's really beautiful, like to see that style of dance. And then they all started dancing in unison, and I can hear those cones. I was like, that's my style of dance. That's what it is. Not knowing anything about what the jingle dress was until I had to get that teaching as well. So that's how I got that, I guess, nudge to make my style of dancing jingle. So as well as with our spirit names, in our creation story, we fall through a rainbow of colors. So that's how we get our colors. So when you go to powwows, you'll see people in different colors, different styles of dancing. Like I said, mine's jingle. So my colors are pink, white, brown, and green. So when you look at my regalia, that's generally all the colors that's me. So that's another part of our journey, is to learn what those colors mean. What does our spirit name mean? Like some people have spirit names of like past chiefs or past elders. Some people have a transition name, like mine, like floating butterfly, and that's, some people have um like thundercloud, or like a really descriptive name. So it's kind of neat when you like, and that's another thing, you offer your tobacco to that elder who has that gift, and he will take your tobacco and he'll smoke it, he or she will smoke it, and they will let you know what your spirit name is. They don't give you your name, they just have the gift to retrieve that name for you. So that's like another thing about your regalia, is generally when you have your regalia, you kind of know what your colors are, you know what your name is, so you kind of model it and tailor it around that. And that takes a long time. Like to make my regalia from like top to bottom, like I need like a feather in the back. It probably took me a year
Wow.
just to get all the fabric, just to get all the cones, just to get the buckskin and the vintage fabric. It took a long time. And then my fan, and then like these, so I'm wearing like an otter pelt.
Oh,
So
yes.
generally you have them tied on both sides, and then you have it kind of braided into your hair, and then you put your medallion. So I have two of them, and these are heavy. Put them right here.
Oh, wow.
And then you dance with them. And then I have like my choker. But so when you put on your dress, it's like another probably 50 pounds. Like those cones are
And then you
heavy.
got to go and dance in that in the heat. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, now we're going to go on to that is this is your tradition, and any other part of the UK, you'd call it your religion as well, because
Mhm.
you're giving these things to the creator, or your creator. And of course, I'm going to throw a bit of a speed wobble into this and throw up this particular picture, looking unto Jesus and residential schools. I mean, how must this have affected your
Lots of,
societies?
oh, there's probably not one person, not one Indigenous person that hasn't been affected by residential school, to be honest. When you look at the intergenerational trauma and how it's kind of went back generation to generation, there probably
Absolutely.
hasn't been one person that hasn't been affected. So yeah, it's pretty, and you know, we heard stories, like myself included, heard stories about elders saying that, you know, a lot of youth, a lot of people died at those schools, and you know, it was common that we knew about it. So when they actually started to find those bodies, it was like validation to those elders, and some of them have passed too, that you know, this happened, this existed, and you know, this was Canada's shame, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was picking up some, as I explained earlier, I made a little video of a bunch of different images and about leaders must acknowledge the hard truths of it. I mean, think about south of the border and them just trying to change their history. Um, how are they gonna, how can you hide this? How can you not take the responsibilities? And who takes the ultimate responsibility?
Well, we're starting to get some payment now of like the Huron Robinson Treaty, which is like this, a lot of First Nations where I'm living. We have what's called treaty money. And when we signed these treaties way back in the day, we were told that we were going to get annual profit from like for instance, a dam that they erected in Espanola, and we haven't gotten a dime since then. So between each First Nation, some people are getting between 78,000 and between 300 and $300,000.
Is that each? I mean, and comparing, if you think, I mean, pardon me, money can't bring back all those lives that were lost. And
No, it
if
doesn't.
they, I mean, and the things that were lost, I mean, I don't know much about the treaties, but and I find it incredibly strange, actually. The information that I have found is that the treaties in Canada are basically they're signed with the monarchy, not the government of Canada. So the monarchy who has signed those treaties with you is responsible for those treaties. And when you're taking a look at the government then coming and writing roughshod over it, what are they paying for? They're paying for writing roughshod over your the treaties as they stand today? Because, I mean, they're still valid, aren't they, these treaties?
Oh, yeah, well, definitely.
I mean, how much responsibility would you think that the monarchy or the church has instead of the Canadian government? And then
The
saying
monarchy
that,
hasn't done anything. You know, the Queen was supposed to help us with some of the stuff, and she never did. I don't even think she ever came back when they signed that. So that was like a loss for us. And then with residential schools, that like just tore a bunch of people apart. And then the Indian Act on top of that, and Indian day schools. The Indian Act was probably just as bad.
mm,
And they got
it's
rid of the Indian Act in 1985.
nice. You see, although, as if we go through this little video, I mean, I tried to bring in something from South Africa as well. I mean, I think they had something similar as the Bantu Act up until the 1980s as well. Um, I mean, the experience in South Africa, bearing in mind I'm white European and these are Bantu South Africans that are having to deal with the troubles, like much like yourselves here. I mean, I'm at kind of a loss because as me, myself, and I epitomize this colonialization, and it's trying to wrap your head around it. I mean, for example, the 60s scoop,
Yep.
you got picked up in the tail end of that. Am I correct?
Yeah. Me and my brother were picked up, and we were removed, I should say, from our house, brought about 3 hours away onto an island, and put into a non-Indigenous single white home. And our aunties or uncles, our mother had no idea where we were until we were about maybe 20 years old. They
Wow.
thought they thought like we had died because we just disappeared and nobody knew where we were.
Gosh. And I, and this was actually, I mean, this is in the 80s, right? So this was this is sanctioned by the government.
Yep.
And this was religious as well. I mean, how much did they force religion on you or going to schools or
It wasn't really forced religion. It was more that they took away our life. Like what they took away, like the patriarchal, no, the matriarch. So in our society, like in Indigenous societies, it's a woman who kind of delegate everything. So when I was taken away, I didn't learn my language. I was able to speak fluent Ojibwe with my Nokomis, like my grandmother.
mm-hmm.
So I was speaking the language. I was doing traditional things. So we have what's called our seven grandfathers. So we were, doing berry picking. I remember us following the salmon run. I remember going with my uncles doing the salmon run. I remember them snaring rabbits. I remember eating barbecue sturgeon.
Mm.
I remember like doing a lot of outdoor things. And if my mother wasn't there, like my birth mother, I was with my aunties or I was with my cousins or I was with my uncles. And we were always doing stuff. So and our cousins and brothers, so they took me and my brother away from that, put us on an island, away from our language, away from our teachings, away from my cousins and aunties. It was just me and my brother. And we didn't know what had really happened, to tell you the truth. Nobody ever came and asked us how we are. We couldn't figure out why, or nobody called us or wished us happy birthday. It was really sad. And she was
Yeah.
very abusive. Like she had a mental illness, and this was acknowledged later. So it was terrible. And so, like, I think I left when I was 16, and my brother left a little bit younger than that. And then from there, like, we didn't really fit in. So I wasn't really Indigenous and I wasn't really white. So it was like trying to grasp where I was, and I didn't know any family. And my foster mom ended up getting sick and she died of cancer in 1999. So I didn't really know anybody. Me and my brother kind of floated around for a while trying to figure out who we were. And for
Yeah.
me, I was lucky. I went to school. I saw how they treated us in Sault Ste. Marie, how they treated Indigenous people. I thought, I think I'm going to go to school and better myself and come back and show you guys, like, you suck.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was raised to sort of like relatively believe in a god, the queen, and I was raised in my culture, even in a foreign country. But I can't imagine being torn away from all of that. It must be just heartbreaking. And at this particular point, I'm going to stop recording because I'm getting an unstable message from here, from my internet connection. I was, and we'll start another recording in a moment. So bear with me. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back. And we are going on to the discussion of residential schools. Now, again, this was all to do with religion, and so many sad things have happened. So I'm going to leave this up to you, Bobbi. Tell us your story, your family story of residential schools.
So my Nokomis, or Florence Solomon, was put into, I'm pretty certain she was put in the residential school in the Spanish River Reserve, or which is now Sagamok and Steinbeck. So she was put there, and when she got out, she lived in Blind River for a bit, but not before she lived in Sagamok, and she actually had 10 children there. And if for some reason or another she left Sagamok, went to Blind River, and had another 7 children. And that's where my birth mom came from. So, but like, residential schools did a lot of damage, not only to like my grandmother, but it did a lot of damage to my mother, my uncles, my aunties, my cousins, because how she came back, she used alcohol as a crutch, apparently. And so that directly affected how she could parent. They had a hard time showing affection because of the beatings and the mistreatment that they had in residential schools. So it just spawned like a bunch of terrible things that happened. So because of that, then my birth mom didn't know how to parent. And so she used alcohol as a crutch too, but I never saw it. I never saw any of that. I guess your brain kind of turns that off when you're younger. So I guess I was living with aunties and uncles, and like in our society, in Indigenous society, if a mother can't mother, then the aunties and uncles will come in, or their grandmas will come in, or like. So I was always kind of with one of them, but I guess Children's Aid didn't like that or say yes, and they're like, no, we don't like where you're going. We don't think you can properly parent, to my aunties and uncles, and particularly my grandmother. So that's when they took us. They took me and my brother. So like I don't want to say I handled it well, but like I look at my brother and he's got his own mental illness. He suffered from an addiction until last year he got clean. I had three other sisters. One of them was addicted to morphine, the other one was addicted to cocaine, and the other one who recently passed 2 years ago, she was, a street girl, and then she took every drug that she could possibly get. And unfortunately, that took her life.
So it becomes an intergenerational problem by that stage of the game. And
Yep.
it's like a never-ending cycle that you can't seem to get out of. And then I'm assuming that the money that they're paying back is to the families, not to the communities.
Is well, I can't speak because every First Nation is different. So my First Nation, I believe, is chosen to give the money to individual people instead of putting it back to the First Nation. But some First Nations might not be taking that route. It's up to the chief and council, and essentially the members of the First Nation.
And how now, as a rank outsider and not understanding the way the treaties fully work or how they're supposed to be managed even by the Canadian government, how would you think to imagine that reconciliation can happen without honoring those treaties, still by the Canadian government honoring those treaties?
I don't know if reconciliation is ever going to happen. I think we're definitely getting there. I think people are acknowledging past lies. People are starting to see like Indigenous societies as they really are. Like if you go to a First Nation, what do you actually see? You don't see white picket fences. You don't see a beautiful garden. You see probably people walking around high. You see needles in the playground. You see dogs running around like packs of dogs, not like a dog, a pack of dogs that are attacking people. Like First Nations, a lot of people still go back to like people come home after the residential schools and they have babies in the First Nations, and then because they can't parent, those kids have kids, and then they don't get out, so then they start turning to drugs. Now you have a lot of people dying on First Nations. I worked in the First Nation for 3 years, and I can't tell you how many people died during those 3 years that I was there. Like I want to say at least 7, if not more than that. And these are young kids.
And then there's not
Young
even to
kids.
talk about all the missing
Yeah. And they
women.
try to get out, and then they turn. It's just terrible. It's like a never-ending cycle. And, it's only going to start with these children, now. So, like, I'm putting all my heart and soul into raising little Moonlight and trying to get her, those teachings and raise her well. And as a single mom, sometimes it's difficult, but
And
I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I bought a house. I have a car. I have a really good job. I'm exploring other possibilities. So, like, I'm just one person that really tried to
stop the cycle.
not stop the cycle and not let it affect me, because it still does affect me. I don't think it's ever not going to stop affecting me, just with certain things that I do. I'm very introverted. I'm very guarded. When is, I sometimes I shouldn't be. I'm like, Bobby, you shouldn't be like that. But I am, unfortunately.
Well, that's the psychological angle of it, and that's going down a whole different route, because saying that you've got the psychological side where the society has been inflicted with these damages, and then you've got the other side who is too arrogant to admit their errors, based on, I mean, I just have to think of the British sort of like going on saying, oh, we're a kingdom, this, that, and the next thing, and say, oh, we're so wonderful. And then they want to turn around and throw the monarchy out and be like, well, you wouldn't be able to say you were so wonderful without your monarchy. Granted, the monarchy that I'm talking about has over the years done awful, horrible, horrible, horrible things. That's part of the history. It's part of your culture. You've got to be honest about that. You can't fake it. You can't turn around and say, oh, no, we don't want it now. We want all the the entitlement that our empire gave us, but we don't want our monarch that goes with it. One's got to give at some point. And I find it really, really hard, even just watching in South Africa, where we'd have problems with them saying, oh, you can have them working in your house, but God forbid they must be walking the streets at night. So, and as I said, it's a totally different type of thing, but it's the same wherever. And in South Africa and Canada, they both had the British and the French involved. And in South Africa's case, they had the Dutch as well. So they had all these different varying things, and then wars. And that's another thing. Everything changes after a war, and people change, and people are used to win wars. I'm sure that a lot of the First Nations were used on many occasions to win their many battles across Americas at some
Yeah, I guess they just stole and pillaged our land.
Well, yeah, pretty
That's where the
much.
treaties came from.
Pretty much. It's actually quite horrifying. And I say horrifying just from my perspective, and I'm just looking from the outside in. I've only studied a bit of psychology. I can't even begin to imagine the heartbreak that people have gone through for this kind of stuff. And the arrogance that incited it.
I see a lot more people bouncing back, though. Like, I see elders more willing to talk more about it, more willing to share the stories and teachings. And that's healing for them, because before they wouldn't ever share those stories. So it's really nice to go to ceremonies and have like an elder speak out about his trauma, but at the same time, they're healing by talking about it. Like they're not holding on to that pain. So I like seeing that.
So it's a little bit, the conversation is more open now, you think?
It's more open. It's definitely more open. It's definitely talked about, but there's still a lot of bitter elders out there.
Well, yeah, that's what happens. It's like and people get more bitter the older they get as well. It's just, especially if they've had really, really hard lives and not much, and lost any faith that they might have had in what's left over of humanity.
Yeah, there's some elders that won't even go outside of the reserve. They won't even go to a bank. They'll keep all their money hidden. Yeah, there's a few on reserve. But teach their own. Like I say, I always think that I need to invest in our future generations. I think whatever happened to the elders, they have to take that and talk about it and cry, because cry is a way of healing in Indigenous society, and move on from it. I don't want to say forget it, because I don't think they'll ever forget it.
No, but it's about moving forward.
Yeah.
My question is how do we integrate what has happened into what we will become? In other words, how do you take all that history and move it together? How does Canada unite with itself, basically? That's my question.
I guess like an apology. I could see an apology. I could see like maybe personally, like if I could pump a bunch of money into First Nations, it would be treatment centers or detoxes, sweat lodges, like bringing in those land-based teachings.
And the more traditional ones for healing?
Oh yeah, like we have one in our First Nation Sossaman. So if somebody wants to detox or do like a sweat, then the elder brings them out. They do all the necessary protocols, I guess you could say. So Sagamok is pretty ahead that way, because some First Nations are not like that. I don't want to speak on all First Nations, but like I just know that we do a lot of cool things on Sagamok that some First Nations don't do. Like for instance, we have All Souls Day. So on November 29th, I think the day before that, everyone will make like a feast of something. So could be beans, it could be like, I don't know, deviled eggs, and you'll go to every house and eat something and put like your own little thing in the spirit plate, and you do that all on Sagamok. It's so cool. It's like a big potluck party.
Well, on that potluck, I think we're running out of time here. I might have to send another invite so we can carry on talking. Hold on 1 minute. I'm going to switch off here and we may or may not be back. Speak to you soon. Ciao.